She sacrifices her dream job abroad to help her family pay tuition fees, only to learn her younger sister manipulated the situation to claim the opportunity herself. Now she must decide whether revenge or resilience will define her future. The envelope was still warm from the sun when I tore it open, my hands trembling as though they already knew the weight of what lay inside. The words on the page glowed brighter than anything I had ever read. An official offer for the job I had dreamed of since college. A position abroad that promised not only financial freedom but the chance to finally step into the life I had imagined for myself. For a moment the world around me blurred. I could hear my own heartbeat louder than the chatter of neighbors outside, louder than the clinking of dishes in the kitchen. It felt like destiny had finally knocked on my door. But before I could even finish reading the letter, my mother's voice called from the other room. She was discussing tuition fees again, her tone heavy with worry. My younger siblings' education had become a mountain we were all climbing together, and I knew my parents were exhausted. I folded the letter quickly, pressing it against my chest, as if hiding it could delay the decision I already felt pressing against my conscience. That night I sat at the dinner table with my family. My father's face looked older than it had just a year ago, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. My mother tried to smile, but her hands shook as she served food. My sister sat beside me, cheerful as always, her laughter filling the room. I wanted to share my news, to let them celebrate with me, but instead I listened to their worries about bills, about tuition deadlines, about sacrifices they had already made. The letter burned in my pocket, a silent reminder of the choice I would soon make. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every possibility in my mind. If I accepted the job, I could leave, earn well, and maybe send money back home. But the thought of leaving them in their struggle gnawed at me. What if something happened while I was gone? What if my siblings had to drop out because I wasn't there to help? The guilt was louder than the dream. By morning I had made my decision. I walked into the office where I had to respond, my hands cold despite the summer heat. The clerk looked at me with polite curiosity as I handed over my decline. "Are you sure?" she asked softly, as if sensing the storm inside me. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes, I'm sure." The words tasted bitter, but I swallowed them anyway. When I returned home, my sister greeted me with a hug. "You're amazing," she whispered, her voice dripping with admiration. "You always put us first." Her words soothed me and I believed them. I thought she truly understood the weight of what I had given up. I thought she respected me for it. The days that followed were filled with sacrifice. I picked up extra shifts at the local store, standing on my feet until they ached. I skipped meals to save money, telling myself I wasn't hungry. I sold my old books, my favorite watch, even a pair of earrings my grandmother had given me. Each item carried a memory, but I let them go, convincing myself that family mattered more than possessions. One evening I came home late, my clothes smelling of sweat and dust. My sister was on the phone, her voice hushed, her tone confident. I caught fragments of her words. Something about opportunities, something about leaving soon. When she noticed me, she quickly ended the call, smiling innocently. "Just talking to a friend," she said. I nodded, too tired to question her. But the changes were undeniable. She began dressing differently, carrying herself with a new kind of pride. She spoke of plans, of dreams, of things she had never mentioned before. At first I thought it was normal, she was growing up, finding her own path. I wanted to be supportive, to encourage her. Yet deep down something felt off. One afternoon as I was folding laundry, she walked in with a sparkle in her eyes. "You'll see," she said mysteriously. "Everything will work out." I laughed, brushing it off, but her words lingered. What did she mean? Why did she sound so certain? I tried to ignore the unease. I told myself I was imagining things, that exhaustion was clouding my judgment. But every time I saw her whispering into the phone, every time she avoided my gaze, the doubt grew stronger. So I carried on. I worked harder, saved more, and pushed myself beyond my limits. I believed that my sacrifices were building a future for all of us. I believed that my sister's gratitude was genuine. I believed that my choice, though painful, was noble. Looking back now, I realize that was the moment the first crack appeared in my heart. Not when I declined the job, not when I handed over the letter, but when I ignored the signs that something was wrong. I wanted so badly to believe in her, in us, in the idea that family meant loyalty. I wanted to believe that my sacrifice would be honored. The truth was already unfolding around me, hidden in her secretive calls, in her sudden confidence, in her eagerness to leave home. I didn't see it then. I brushed it aside, thinking she was just growing up. I didn't realize those signs were pieces of a puzzle that would soon shatter my trust completely. The sound of her laughter that night still echoes in my ears. It wasn't the kind of laughter that warms a room. It was sharp, mocking, and filled with a confidence I had never heard from her before. I stood frozen in the hallway, the dim light from the living room spilling across the floor, listening as she told her friend how cleverly she had convinced our parents that I should step aside. My name was tossed around like a joke, my sacrifice reduced to a punchline. I felt my chest tighten as though the air itself had turned against me. I pushed the door open, unable to stay hidden any longer. She looked up, startled for only a second, then her smile returned, calm and unbothered. "You weren't supposed to hear that," she said, her tone almost playful. I asked her directly, my voice trembling, "Did you really do this? Did you really make them believe I should give up everything so you could take it?" She leaned back in her chair, folded her arms and replied without hesitation, "Yes. It's my turn now. You've had enough chances. I deserve this." Her words cut deeper than any blade could. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the absence of guilt. She didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't even try to soften the blow. She had planned it all and I had walked right into her trap. I stormed into the kitchen where my parents were sitting. My mother looked up, startled by my expression. "What happened?" she asked, her voice cautious. I told them everything I had overheard, every word my sister had admitted. My father sighed, rubbing his temples while my mother tried to calm me. "Both of you deserve opportunities," she said gently. "We can't choose one over the other." But their eyes betrayed them. They believed her charm, her promises, her lies. I felt invisible, as if my sacrifices had been erased in a single moment. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every detail. The hugs she had given me, the words of admiration she had whispered, the promises that she would make me proud, all of them now felt poisoned. I wondered how long she had been weaving this web. Was it from the very beginning? Had she smiled at me while secretly plotting to take what was mine? The bitterness grew and revenge whispered in my ear. The next morning I tried to carry on as usual. I went to work, smiled at customers and forced myself to act normal. But inside I was unraveling. Every time I saw her, every time she laughed, I felt the sting of betrayal. I began to notice things I had ignored before. Her secretive phone calls, her sudden confidence, her eagerness to leave home. It all made sense now. She had been preparing for this moment, while I had been blindly sacrificing for her. One evening I confronted her again. "Do you even realize what you've done?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger. She shrugged, her tone dismissive. "You're too soft. You always put others first. I knew you'd give it up if I pushed hard enough." And I was right. I stared at her, unable to believe the coldness in her words. "I gave up my dream for this family," I said quietly. "And you turned it into your victory." She smirked, tilting her head. "Maybe you should stop living for others and start living for yourself." Her words lingered, not because they were wise, but because they revealed the truth of her manipulation. She had twisted my kindness into weakness, my sacrifice into opportunity. My parents tried to mediate, but their attempts only deepened the wound. "She's young," my father said. "She needs this chance." My mother added, "You'll find another opportunity. You're strong." Their voices were filled with love, but their actions betrayed favoritism. They believed her charm, her promises, her lies. I felt like a shadow in my own home, unseen and unheard. Nights became restless. I tossed and turned, replaying every moment, every word she had spoken. I questioned myself. Was I too naive, too trusting? Had I been blind to her true nature all along? The bitterness grew and revenge whispered louder. I imagined exposing her lies, revealing the truth to everyone. I imagined watching her fall, stripped of the opportunity she had stolen. But amid the anger, another thought crept in. Could resilience be my weapon instead? Could I rebuild myself without sinking into hatred? The question haunted me, pulling me in two directions. One night I found myself sitting alone in the garden, the cool air brushing against my skin. I thought about the sacrifices I had made, the dreams I had given up, the trust one had lost. I realized that my sister's betrayal had not only stolen my opportunity, It had stolen my peace. And I had to decide whether I would let it steal my future too. The days that followed were filled with tension. My sister walked around the house with a newfound confidence, her steps lighter, her smile brighter. My parents praised her, encouraged her, supported her. I watched silently, my heart heavy with anger and sorrow. Yet deep down I knew I had a choice to make. I began to write in a journal, pouring out my thoughts, my pain, my anger. Each word felt like a release, a way to reclaim my voice. I wrote about the betrayal, about the nights I couldn't sleep, about the whispers of revenge that haunted me. And slowly I began to see a path forward. The betrayal had unfolded, sharp and undeniable. It had cut deeper than any sacrifice I had made. But it had also revealed something I had never seen before, the strength within me to rise above it. And so, I stood at the edge of a decision, torn between revenge and resilience, knowing that whichever path I chose would define not only my future but the person I would become. The night after I filled my journal with anger, I sat at my desk staring at the blank page. My pen hovered, but the words refused to come. Instead, images filled my mind. Her face, her laughter, the way she had dismissed me as though my sacrifice was nothing. I imagined writing a letter to the company abroad, exposing her lies, tearing down the image she had built. The thought gave me a strange sense of power. For a moment I could almost taste the satisfaction of watching her fall. But then another image appeared. My parents, weary and fragile, caught in the middle of another storm. If I chose revenge, it wouldn't just be her who suffered. It would ripple through the family, reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. I pressed the pen down, leaving a deep mark on the paper, then set it aside. Revenge was tempting, but it carried consequences I wasn't sure I could live with. The next morning I forced myself to step outside. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh bread from the bakery down the street. I walked aimlessly, trying to clear my head. At the corner I met an old neighbor, Mr. Rahman, who asked how I was doing. His kindness caught me off guard. I hesitated, then simply said, "I'm trying to find my way." He nodded knowingly, as if he understood more than I had spoken. That brief exchange reminded me that not everyone measured worth through manipulation. Some people valued honesty, resilience, and quiet strength. I began to explore opportunities closer to home. They weren't glamorous, not like the job abroad, but they were real. I volunteered at a local community center, helping children with their studies. Their eager faces, their laughter, their gratitude, it gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. One little girl hugged me after class and said, "You make learning fun." Her words warmed me in a way my sister's betrayal never could. Meanwhile, my sister thrived abroad, or at least that's what her pictures suggested. She posted images of herself in stylish clothes, standing in front of landmarks, smiling with new friends. Each photo was a knife, sharp and deliberate, reminding me of what I had lost. But I refused to let it bleed me dry. Instead, I used the pain as fuel. I worked harder, saved more, and slowly built a foundation for myself. There were nights when the temptation of revenge returned. I would sit alone, scrolling through her posts, imagining the chaos I could cause with a single email. But then I would close my phone, take a deep breath, and remind myself that strength wasn't about destroying others. It was about rebuilding yourself. One evening, as I was leaving the community center, I met a woman named Aisha. She was older, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. We spoke briefly, and she told me about her own struggles, how she had once lost everything but rebuilt her life piece by piece. "Resilience," she said softly, "is the quiet victory no one can take away." Her words stayed with me, echoing in my mind long after we parted. Weeks passed and I grew stronger. My sister's life abroad seemed perfect from the outside, but cracks began to show. She called one day, her voice trembling. "I need help," she admitted. "It's harder here than I thought." I listened, calm and steady, my heart no longer burning with anger. I realized then that revenge wasn't necessary. Life had its own way of teaching lessons. I didn't gloat, didn't remind her of what she had done. Instead, I offered quiet advice, nothing more. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't cruelty either. It was balance. She had chosen her path, and now she had to walk it. In the end, I chose peace. Not forgiveness, not forgetfulness, but peace. I carried my scars with pride, knowing they told a story of sacrifice, betrayal, and strength. My future was mine again, not defined by her manipulation, but by my decision to rise above it. I began to see my life differently. The job abroad had been a dream, yes, but it wasn't the only dream. I found joy in small victories. The laughter of children at the community center, the kindness of neighbors, the quiet satisfaction of earning my own way. Each step forward was proof that resilience had become my weapon, my shield, my victory. Sometimes late at night I still thought about what could have been. But instead of bitterness, I felt a strange calm. My sister's betrayal had changed me, but it hadn't broken me. It had forced me to discover a strength I didn't know I had. And so I carried on, not with revenge, not with hatred, but with resilience. My scars became my story, my strength became my future, and my peace became my triumph.